Over to Danah.
Hi, good afternoon. In 2008, a bunch of young people decided that they wanted to mess with Oprah Winfrey. Oprah had been talking obsessively for a long time about how the greatest threat to young people was a series of online sexual predators represented by a teddy bear that they were sort of coming out of the woodwork and being represented by different networks online. And so they decided that they would see if they could alter her message, change what she was saying. They decided to put content all over different kinds of websites, and in particular went into her online fora. And they built a narrative. They told her that there were all of these real threats. And indeed, she went on live air and said explicitly that he doesn't forgive, he doesn't forget, his group has over 9,000 penises and they're raping our children. And that the greatest threat to children was Pedo Bear, a teddy bear representing this group. Of course, the internet rolled over laughing, right? Because nothing was funnier than to see Oprah reference all of these anonymous references, these anime references. And we thought it was funny, and many people thought it was funny. But what was happening in those environments is that a lot of young people were learning the same thing that other people were learning at that time, which is that they had the ability to mess with the broader information landscape. So we see the whole culture of troll dynamics start to emerge. The idea that you can mess with any system out there just to show that you could. It was the ability to hack the attention economy. And so for folks who had grown up thinking they could hack the security economy, the ability to shift and be able to affect and influence the kind of media rhetorics was huge. And they built community doing this. They built networks of people trying to figure out how they could learn from each other. They shared sources. They looked back to the history of propaganda, the history of media as it was shaped by different kinds of military actors. And they said, what can we learn from this? They were the sophisticated social media marketing environment. But then they got a lot more hateful. And they got a lot more hateful in part because the dynamics changed. A lot of folks started attacking what they were doing and the kinds of gameplay that they were having. And so there was a sense of game on. But there were also a whole set of different kinds of adversarial actors who had long been sort of in the margins using different kinds of internet technologies who started coming along with them. And the beginning of it really was around Gamergate. It was the ability to actually think about this as a gendered game and the ability to use ambiguity strategically and sophisticatedly to actually share messages. But as we've seen over the last 2 years, we actually saw a tidal wave. Because it wasn't just that Gamergate opened up the possibility of a hate orientation, but by moving things and suppressing those content on sites like 4chan, kicking it off and turning it deeper into darker webs, we saw coordination, sophisticated coordination between people with white supremacist and white nationalist ideologies, Hindu nationalists, conspiracy theorists, men's rights movements, teenagers who were just in it for the lulz, a whole set of cast of characters trying to come together, willing to share tactic, even if they didn't share end goal. And as they coordinated and played these different games, we also saw a series of state actors coming in to play with them. Right? And of course, this is where you've had this conversation over and over again over the last 2 days. But it's really important to realize that this is not just about foreign state actors. This is not just about this moment in time. This is a process that has been building for 20 years. A process that has been core to the internet of being able to manipulate and shape what is going on in more and more sophisticated ways. Right? And I want you to understand that because I want you to understand what's about to come. We are obsessed with AI as the idea that it will be the solution. What does AI depend on? AI depends on data. AI depends on the idea that we can consume large quantities of data about people or produced by people or going to shape the dynamics of people, and that even if it's messed up, we might be able to clean it in good enough to make it make sense. But one of the things that's so fascinating about watching the groups that I just mentioned evolve is they've got their eyes on AI too. They've got they already are experimenting. Let's just see if we can mess with the natural language processing systems that are part of major corporations by messing with their core data sources. What kinds of vulnerabilities exist in those data sources and what can we do about them? right? And so all of a sudden we have a big shift going on, which is that we used to think that our only security vulnerabilities might have been something around access, and now our vulnerabilities are about data injection. They're about different kinds of systems that can work their way into these streams to really mess with us. Now, it's not just the kinds of manipulation, because frankly, the people that I'm tracking aren't that sophisticated getting there. But there's already a lot of implicit biases that we actually have to deal with. And so let's refer to the work that LaTanya Sweeney started doing. She realized one day, she's a computer scientist at Harvard. One day she decides to go into Google and search for her own name, right? Thinking, oh, ego search, what can I find about myself? And she noticed something funny about the ads. She noticed that all of the ads were criminal justice related products. And she was like, I've never been arrested. I doubt this has to do with me. So, being a good geek, she decides to throw a series of efforts to look at the Google system and say, which names are more likely to produce what kinds of ads. Doesn't be that surprising that if you use canonically black names, you are far more likely to get criminal justice related products than if you use canonically white names. Now, LaTanya's not dumb. She understood that the issue wasn't that Google had thought to split the world into black and white names and sell based on that. What Google had done is allow people to place content across certain features like names, and the public would click on whatever they would click on, and it would train the system. So what happened is that because the American public is so racist and has a really biased sense that when they are searching for people with black names, they're far more likely to click on criminal justice related products, they taught Google their racism. And Google learned it and fed it back out at all of us. Right? That's the kind of biases that get built into our systems, very simple machine learning systems, over and over again. Now, if we want to think about other kinds of vulnerabilities that you're seeing, Nick Papernot's been doing this phenomenal work. We're all excited about autonomous vehicles. Wouldn't they be really cool? They rely on a ton of computer vision in order to be effective. So he was wondering what you could do to mess with those computer vision systems. And understanding how those vision systems work, he decided to modify a series of images of stop signs, knowing that with just a few changes of the pixels, he could convince the system to realize or believe those pictures to be yield signs. Think about what that means for the vulnerability of our systems writ large. What does it mean to be able to alter content on the fly? Now, this is a research project, right? But what does it mean as we start to think about those systems in the wild? What kind of subtle shifts can actually make a difference? The reason I bring this up is because we need to get back to a world where we're actually thinking about technical antibodies. We need to actually understand that we have to think through the complexities of how our systems may be maligned. Not all the good, like, wouldn't it be great if, but really, where are the vulnerabilities? And where are the vulnerabilities in our technical systems because of the socio-technical? Because of the interface between the social dynamics that are out there and the technical infrastructure. And I think that's really important because we are barely even coming to terms with security breaches at this point. What does it mean that this is going to be part of the entire ecosystem? And part of it, of course, is we've lost the culture of test. Test used to be a core part of building technical systems. And many of you probably still have some form of quality assurance in your business units. But one of the things that I've noticed is that social media obliterated the idea that we should have test. We would just throw things out to the wild and see how people would mess with them and hope that we would learn from their games and build it back into our systems. That's not going to work going forward. As we see these systems back into the wild, we need to actually bring test back into our ecosystem. We need to not only think about what it means to actually think about white hat hacking, but white hat trolling, white hat data interjections. How do we start really making sense of this? Because if we don't pay attention to those environments, we're going to be having a hard time rolling out the systems we care so much about. Now, part of it is that technologies change, right? The tech industry is no longer the passion play of a bunch of geeks. It really was at one point. Those geeks wanted to build cool shit in the world. That was what drove huge chunks of this valley. Many of you believe in it, are committed to that. But at this point in the evolution of tech, tech is now the foundation of our democracy, our economy, and every aspect of our information landscape. And we can no longer sit back and just be like, we hope this will work if we put it out in the wild. We now need to proactively think about all of the unintended consequences of all of our systems.